What's in a name? A dungeon by any other name would smell as dank. Hey, I'm James. Once upon a time, I house sat for my bosses and their house burnt down. It was not my fault. The next door house caught on fire and it had nothing to do with me. Still sucked. Anyway, I'm here to dork out about dungeons and designs on Crumbling Keeps, the Dungeon Dorks. So this year I did it. I finally started I guess Dungeon 25 now at this point. What is that? That means every day of this year, I've committed to creating a new room in a massive mega dungeon. We'll see if I manage to stick to it. But I'm really excited about my idea for it, and I've never actually made a mega dungeon before. And I'm excited to both create it and play in it. 365 rooms. What makes that work? Toward the end of last year, I had to ask myself that question because I didn't want to start January 1st going in blind. How do you make a dungeon like that both cohesive and interesting? So I did my pre-legwork. I started by writing a history. And if you're doing a dungeon of any size, I'm going to suggest you do this too. So you start with the basics, the beginning. How was this dungeon created? Likely it wasn't there from the beginning of time. Something or someone created it. In my case, this was an elder god falling out of the sky and crashing into the ground and creating a massive crater. Waters rushed in from the nearby ocean and froze, as this is pretty far north in the world I'm creating this on. The maggots that lived on said elder god turned into, well, kinda elves, and they burrowed through the ice, creating the first steps of this dungeon. So that's good to have a start, but then what was it after that? And what is it in present day? And you can add a few steps there. The dungeon, or at least portions of it, change over time as to what their use is. Me, I had a mage flee into it after the natives above decided that they needed to die. I've had deserting military forces go in there and change into bandits. So you can see multiple people use this area for different things. I would probably suggest making at least one of these things magical because you want to have an excuse for all the weird magical stuff going on in your dungeon. Unless you want to avoid weird magical stuff altogether, but come on, weird magical stuff. Traps, weird happenings, places where light will never penetrate. Magic. But talking about those different groups brings me into the next part. Factions. You want factions in your dungeon because that gives it a reason for it to not just be endless combat. There's a goblin in this room. Fight it. There's orcs in the next room. Kill them. Oh, look, it's a room full of ogres. Sit down and have tea? Nah, stab them in the gullet. Factions give role-playing opportunities. If you find out that those goblins don't like those ogres, well, now you have something to leverage against the other. You interact more as opposed to just roll initiative and kill. What do these factions want? Who do they like? Who do they hate? What are they willing to do to get what they want? Maybe they are the ones giving quests to the adventurers, so it makes it more of a living, breathing area. Something to interact with like they would interact with society above ground, but in a dungeon. So you have your history and you have your factions. This is a great basis to build your mysteries. Figure out a few big ones, and then you're going to want to throw seeds about them all around. If we take my idea about the Elder God and the ground, at the heart of this ice cave dungeon is a dying Elder God. The PCs don't know this. going into the dungeon. That means I get to seed hints about it all around and build up to something truly big. And that curiosity, that's what gets you buy-in from the players. And there's going to be a few other mysteries as well. The mage that escaped into it, he's since done a lot of experiments and transformed into some kind of crazy beast rampaging through the tunnels, breaking through the ice. And there'll be hints toward that as well, about the true nature of this weird adversary. So just because it's underground or in a dungeon doesn't mean you can't do world building. And that's where these factions and these mysteries and the history all play into it. A dungeon can be just as rich and engaging as a hex crawl in the outside world. And if you're going to make one with 365 rooms, it probably should be, or it's going to become a slog real quick. And we'll see how I end up doing on this. As of this recording, I'm about to start working on day 2 of my Dungeon 25, but I have some ideas, and I am excited to give it a go. We'll check in next time, and I'll see you next time we delve the depths. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you have any questions about anything I talked about here today or on any past episodes of Dungeon Dorks, go to crumblingkeep.com/question and ask away, or just check the link in the show notes.